about an important relationship in your life. How does it make you feel? Happy? Protective? Or worried? A bit guilty? Do you spend enough time together? Are you normally kind and considerate? Or do you often take things for granted? Now, what about your relationship with nature? How's that going? It's not a relationship we think or talk about very often, but we all have one, and it greatly influences our health and happiness, far more than we realise. Most of us know a bit of fresh air makes us feel better, but over the last 30 years, researchers have found the health benefits of nature go much further. A close connection with nature can measurably reduce stress, depression, and anxiety. It can make us feel happier and more satisfied with our lives. It can even accelerate healing. As for our children, engaging with nature improves their physical health, but also their sleep, their concentration, their creativity, their self-esteem. Honestly, if pharmaceuticals could bottle and sell the benefits of nature, they would. And it's a relationship that goes both ways. The better our connection with nature, the more likely we are to adopt healthier habits and more sustainable lifestyles. We're more likely to change what we buy, what we eat, how we travel. We're more likely to recycle and reduce waste, save energy and water. We're more likely to make our gardens wildlife friendly and peat free. And we're more likely to consider nature when we choose who to vote for. Quite simply, the more you love nature, the more you want to take care of it. But our relationship's in trouble, big trouble. We've grown apart. Few of us do have a close connection with nature anymore. Instead, we're spending the vast majority of our lives indoors, mostly sitting down, mostly staring at our screens. We've become so disconnected, our unhealthy and unsustainable lifestyles are making us both sick. Our unhealthy and unsustainable lifestyles are contributing to an obesity epidemic, a mental health crisis, a catastrophic loss of wildlife, and a climate change emergency. We all see the scary headlines, but then we carry on with our lives like normal, as if somehow it's got nothing to do with us. We urgently need to reconnect. We urgently need to improve our relationship with nature. But how? How can we make ourselves care again? Well, I think we just have to start learning to see nature again. Back in 2011, I found myself in a Swiss meeting room, sat next to the chief scientist of the UN Environment Programme, opposite a Nobel Prize winner and alongside a handful of other global experts. We were working on an important report about greenhouse gases, trying to find the best way to communicate the latest evidence. I was there as the report's scientific editor, conscientious and committed, with 3 hard-earned degrees under my belt. It was an influential meeting, but as I looked around the grey and airless meeting room, I realised I had absolutely no interest in being there. I totally believed in the science. It was the process I doubted, and if I'm really honest, my role in it. I'd spent the previous 10 years researching and raising awareness about climate change, but at that particular moment, I was unconvinced another evidence-based report would really make that much difference. But what else could I do? How else could I raise awareness? How else could I help people see the value of nature? I didn't have an answer. So, feeling disillusioned and a bit guilty, I took a career break. I was living in Switzerland and wanted to spend as much time as possible with my 10-month-old baby while I had the opportunity. But my gorgeous Ben was a terrible sleeper and only napped outside. So I got a lot of fresh air and I sat on a lot of park benches. At first, I did what most of us do these days when we sit down. I stared at my phone. But then, one day, on a creative whim, I bought a little sketchbook and started sketching the world around me. The lake and the mountains, the trees in the park, the sparrows at my feet. My sketches were hesitant, clumsy, and often incomplete. Ben never slept for long. But I didn't mind, because they were just for me. Nobody else was ever going to see them. And anyway, I was enjoying my new sketching habit. I found it relaxing. It seemed to calm my anxious, racing mind. It alleviated the loneliness of living abroad. and it was a quiet source of comfort when my beloved dad died unexpectedly. The more I sketched, the more I saw. I started to realise what an abundance of natural beauty there was all around me that I'd never noticed before. The delicate wildflowers growing in our neglected lawn, the orange-tipped butterflies playing chase by the swings, the comical great-crested grebes courting on the lake. It felt as if I was seeing my world with fresh eyes. Every day, I seemed to see more gorgeous colours and more visual treats that lifted my spirits and made me smile again. Nature sketching had turned me into a joy spotter. By the time I returned to the UK, several years later, I was working as an artist, painting colourful, nature-inspired designs. I'd swapped my focus on science communication for a more creative and emotional response to nature's beauty. It's fair to say most of my friends assumed I was having a massive midlife crisis, which I probably was. But I was also intrigued by emerging research into the different ways we connect with nature. Research that's found engaging with natural beauty can actually be a more effective way to connect with nature than traditional knowledge-based approaches, which often focus on learning about and identifying wildlife. Then it dawned on me. This was how I could help. I could use sketching to help people connect with nature. After all, I knew that the moment you pick up a pencil with the intention to sketch, you start seeing our beautiful world much more clearly. You really do. If I were to ask you today to sketch a daisy from memory, and then later on this evening, sketch a daisy from observation, you would be amazed at the difference. You'd be amazed at how much more detail you'd notice. Try it. It doesn't have to be a daisy. You could try a holly leaf or a twig, just something really small and simple. The quality of your sketch is irrelevant. It's the observation that matters. It's the looking and seeing that can change your relationship with nature and improve your well-being. You see, the sight of natural beauty triggers a whole range of positive emotions, including joy and delight, wonder and curiosity, comfort and solace. Positive emotions that have been shown to reduce stress and improve our mood. Now, you might not think a daisy is beautiful yet, but we all know that spark of joy when you spot a rainbow, a fairy tale toadstool, or a group of ducklings on the river. These moments of wonder and delight may seem trivial, but they can trigger an upward spiral in our mood. And research suggests the more we can train our brain to notice these moments, the happier and more emotionally resilient we can become. Of course, you could just take a photo of your daisy, but for most people, a photo is quick, passive, and forgettable. It's easy to look, but we don't always see. Whereas sketching is slower, requires concentration, and engages multiple senses. It can heighten your perception and experience of your surroundings, revealing sources of joy you never knew you had in your life, sources of joy that cost nothing to you or the planet. I never paid any attention to birdsong before I started sketching. Now I notice it all the time. And when I look back at my Swiss sketchbooks, I can vividly recall the precise moments I made each sketch, where I was sitting, what the weather was like, even how sleep-deprived I felt that day. This is why sketching is such a great memory aid and a pragmatic approach to mindfulness. Trust me, there'll be a moment later today when you'll be too absorbed in sketching your daisy to think or worry about anything else. And as for your daisy, after you've carefully sketched it, you'll see it in a new way. You'll have formed your own little connection with it. You may appreciate it more. You may even think twice before calling it a weed. This is how sketching can help us connect with nature. But I was curious. If it's such a great way to connect with nature, why isn't it more popular? After all, it's hardly a new technique. I looked into it and discovered there are 3 major barriers. The biggest issue by far is a lack of confidence. Most of us are absolutely convinced we can't draw well. Hands up if you agree. It's so common to think drawing and sketching are talents that you have to be born with, not skills you can develop. Secondly, we haven't got time. We're far too busy in our modern stressful lives to sit around sketching daisies. We're far too busy spending 2-3 hours every day checking our phones. And finally, many of us just aren't into nature these days. It's much easier to avoid a nature-based activity like sketching when you feel a bit self-conscious about a lack of outdoorsy knowledge or experience. After all, there's nothing worse than an earnest nature enthusiast humiliating you because you don't know your chiff-chaff from your chaffinch. I was determined to find a way. Oh, but it doesn't have to be this way. These barriers lie in our heads, not our hands. A sketch doesn't have to look good to be worthwhile. Anyone who can pick up a pencil can sketch nature. It's the process of sketching, not the quality of the picture you produce, that matters. And it needn't take long. Most of my sketches take less than 10 minutes. Obviously, it takes time to improve, but the benefits for your well-being are immediate. And while some of us do love to learn about nature, you definitely don't need to understand or be able to name something to value and appreciate it. You don't need to understand the life cycle of a kingfisher to be mesmerised by its colourful feathers. You just have to see it. I was determined to find a way to help more people discover the joys and benefits of sketching nature. So I investigated all the different sketching disciplines I could find. Field sketching, nature journaling, botanical drawing, mindful drawing, urban sketching, there are a lot. They're all brilliant and valuable sketching genres in their own right, but none of them fully addressed all three of the barriers I'd identified. I realised we needed a new, confidence-building approach that focused explicitly on nature connection and well-being, not to create future artists, but happy, resilient nature lovers. I've called this new approach green sketching, and I've defined it by 3 guiding principles. It's primarily about using sketching as a tool to see nature, not to create perfect artwork. It's about sketching to enjoy and appreciate nature, not just to learn about it. And it's about sketching your own way for your own joy and well-being, not to impress anyone else. Language is important too. I found if you call it a doodle, everyone's happier. By following these 3 guiding principles, green sketching is now enabling people of all ages to visibly relax and savour nature's colour, beauty and wonder. It's amazing when someone's adamant they can't draw, and then half an hour later they're utterly engrossed in sketching a little hawthorn leaf. And when children tell me they now see nature in a new way, I realise that perhaps my career change wasn't so crazy after all. The more you can focus on the process of sketching and how it makes you feel, the easier it is to let go of a fear of criticism or indeed a need for praise. Instead, you can simply use green sketching to discover what and where makes you happiest outdoors. Personally, I've got a soft spot for blossom trees, bluebell woods and tiny birds, and I'm definitely happiest and most relaxed up in the hills, preferably somewhere boggy. Green sketching might help you discover a love of bumblebees, wildflower meadows, or hungry feathered friends. Our relationships with nature really are as unique as we are, but we share a moral obligation to improve them. Our health and happiness depend on it. The future of humanity depends on it. And just in case that's not enough, our hedgehogs depend on it. We urgently need to find practical and effective ways to help as many people as possible reconnect with nature. And I think green sketching is one of the easiest and most versatile options we have available. It's affordable and accessible. It can be done anywhere, and it requires no specialist knowledge, equipment, or supervision. I'm now investigating the huge potential of green sketching as a pathway to nature connection with scientists at the University of Derby. But maybe we don't need to wait for another scientific report. Just imagine how quickly our relationship with nature could improve if, once a day, we all put down our phones, went outside and sketched nature for 10 minutes. I'm convinced that when we see nature with fresh eyes, we'll start to love, appreciate and take care of it again. But see for yourself. Go home and doodle that daisy. maybe you'll be drawn to love nature too. Thank you.